Happy Veterans Day. As you know on this channel, we tell the stories of the men and women who have made this country so exceptional through their service and sacrifice, and so we especially honor Veterans Day, as well as Memorial Day in May, as two of the most cherished and important days of the year. You know, over the past 6 months, we've done over 300 videos that have been watched 40 million times. Thank you, by the way. And so this Veterans Day, we thought we'd highlight some of the more extraordinary men and women that we've come across and what we've taken away from their amazing stories. Hopefully I won't choke up, but I don't make any promises. So let's start with Calvin Graham. I've actually recorded a longer video on him that's going to drop next week. If you remember, he's the 12-year-old that earned a Purple Heart during the naval battle of Guadalcanal and then was subsequently thrown in the brig, dishonorably discharged, and stripped of his medals. Now, I'm not going to rehash it here again. Wait for the longer video, but it boils my blood every time I think about the way he was mistreated. What I find the most amazing about Calvin is the lengths he went to, at 12, mind you, the kid was 12, to fight for his country, forging his mother's signature, pretending to look and sound older, blackmailing the army dentist who figured out his real age, and so on. All this so he could go halfway around the world and risk his life, which he did, by the way. Now, in all the drama surrounding him, it should never be forgotten that he served both honorably and heroically. That's the part that I take away, is how bravely and selflessly he acted in one of the most important naval battles in American history. Truly remarkable stuff, no two ways about it. Like I said, be on the lookout for the longer video. I think you're gonna love it. We've done so many videos of men willingly sacrificing themselves to save the men around them. We've probably done over 24 videos on this. Most of them are Medal of Honor recipients for good reason, and they're all so heroically and tragically similar. Of these stories, the ones that really get to me are the guys who throw themselves on grenades to protect their men, and there's a lot of those videos. I can't fathom the split-second decision-making that allows these heroes to do what most of us couldn't comprehend, jump on a live hand grenade. But if there's a commonality to all these stories, it's the love they have for their fellow soldiers. As it's been said many, many times, these men aren't necessarily fighting for what's in front of them or for even what's behind them, but rather for the men standing next to them. Of all these videos, Jack Lucas, the 17-year-old Marine, really stands out. At Iwo Jima, Jack actually pulled 2 grenades under him to protect 3 other Marines. One grenade was a dud, and the other one sent 250 pieces of shrapnel into him. I mean, can you imagine that, pulling 2 grenades on you in a split second to protect your men? And again, the kid is 17, and somehow he lived through it all. One of the most amazing stories we've done. You know, we get lots of feedback from viewers saying that they can predict when there will be a happy ending or a sad ending to one of our videos. We usually tip our hand in some way to give viewers a chance to brace themselves. But sometimes we don't. And when we don't, it can feel like a sucker punch when it ends tragically. Look, I confess, we sometimes do that on purpose to punctuate or underscore just how painful these deaths can be. One such is the video of Anthony Marcioni. He was the B-32 photographer, and yes, there really was a B-32, look it up, who died 10,000 feet above Tokyo 3 days after the Japanese had surrendered. He had just turned 20. The war is over, but I guess for one Japanese fighter it wasn't. It may be the single most heartbreaking video we've done. I mean, this kid should have lived. The war was essentially over. It turns out he was the last American killed in combat during World War II. We've done a bunch of videos on actors and athletes who fought in combat, and our viewers really love those videos because it shows another side to these people. And I think it also forces a juxtaposition against actors and athletes back then and now, and there's no doubt the greatest generation wins that comparison every single time. The 3 that really resonated the most was the video on Audrey Hepburn, that she risked her life as part of the Dutch underground to help down Allied pilots. And then there was the Donald Pleasance video, where we learned that he flew 60 combat missions before being shot down and serving in a POW camp. I'm a huge Great Escape fan. Most of you have probably seen our World War II movie video, and I had no idea Donald Pleasence was an actual POW. And neither did the director John Sturges, by the way, who kept admonishing Pleasence for offering gentle suggestions about how to make it more realistic, until someone quietly told Sturges Pleasence was an actual war hero and a POW. I just love that story. And then, of course, the video of Jimmy Stewart, one of our most popular. The guy wins the Oscar for Philadelphia Story in 1941, an amazing movie, by the way, and then after that enlists. I mean, he's a bona fide star at this point. He didn't have to. And he doesn't take some lame PR or desk job. He flies 20 combat missions in a B-24 doing daylight bombing runs, about the most dangerous thing you could do during World War II. I think the 8th Air Force actually had more deaths than the Marines. While John Wayne was making movies about World War II heroism, Jimmy Stewart was actually living it. I have so much respect for that guy. We've done a bunch of videos on nurses, and those really hit home because they are so often forgotten and overlooked, but not to the men on the front lines. They were like guardian angels. Truthfully, they're some of our best videos. The one that really stands out for me the most is the story of Ruby Bradley, who was serving as an army nurse in the Philippines when it was overrun by the Japanese, and she'd be a POW for the entirety of the war. She nearly starved to death, but insisted on giving her food rations to others to help keep them alive. She later served in Korea too, and was ultimately made a colonel, though she probably should have been a general. She is one of the most decorated women in US military history. You know, Hollywood makes so many stupid movies. I really wish they'd make one on Ruby Bradley. She is an unsung and overlooked hero. You know, we've also done so many videos on moments of compassion, moments of humanity, even moments of empathy during the darkest parts of the war. Frankly, they're some of our most popular videos. You guys seem to love those stories, and so do we. There's too many to mention here. I'll link to some of our favorites in the description box, but two in particular really stand out. One is the Christmas Miracle of 1944 in the Hurtgen Forest, which we've done both a short on and a longer video. Again, link in the description box. Check out that longer video. It was essentially an impromptu Christmas dinner between 3 Germans and 3 Americans who each sought refuge at a woman's house on Christmas Eve. You know, there's so many things I love about this story, but what got to me the most was at the very end when the Germans and the Americans went their separate ways the following morning. The German soldiers actually gave the Americans their compasses and maps so they could safely return to their outfit. They could have just as easily not done that, or worse yet, gave them bad directions, but they went out of their way to make sure the Americans made it back safely when they didn't have to. That's one of those moments of pure compassion that reminds us how good people could be to each other if given the chance. You know, I often comment that this or that video is my all-time favorite, and I get that question a lot, but I gotta say, the Hurtgen Forest Christmas Story really is my all-time favorite. Anytime you doubt humanity's innate decency, just watch that video. The other similar video that really gets to me is the story of the pilots Franz Stigler and Charlie Brown. This video was one of our first really big ones to go over 1 million views, and frankly helped launch this channel. Stigler, the German ace, had a chance to shoot down Brown's crippled B-17, but instead of adding to his total, he escorted the bomber out of German airspace. To me, what is so extraordinary about that incident isn't just that he didn't shoot it down, although that's pretty remarkable in itself, but that he also saddled up to the bomber so that other fighters couldn't dust it either. He actually put himself in harm's way, and he also made it obvious to his fellow German pilots that he was aiding the enemy. You know, I've always wondered if he suffered any repercussions or the like, but clearly nothing too severe, because he and Brown actually became friends later in life and died within months of each other at ripe old ages. I just love that video. And of course, we like doing action videos too, telling the story of certain badasses, as we call them, real life G.I. Joes and Captain Americas. Those badass videos are some of our best, and frankly, the most fun for us to do. The one that really stands out to me, actually there's two. One is John Basilone and the other is Matt Urban. We've done longer videos on both. Definitely check them out. Link in the description box. Basilone, because he insisted on going back to the Pacific after receiving the Medal of Honor. I mean, nobody does that. He begged the Marine Corps brass to let him go to Iwo Jima, of all places, where he would eventually die and probably should have received the second Medal of Honor. Along with Chesty Puller, I think Basilone is the greatest Marine in history, and I just love everything the guy stood for. The other one is Matt Urban, who I really think rivals Audie Murphy as the greatest soldier in Army history. His story is way too long to go into again, but the piece that gets me is that he breaks out of the hospital in London, where he's recuperating from really serious injuries, by the way, stows away on a steamer to France, hitchhikes to meet up with his outfit, and joins them just in the nick of time to lead their offensive out of the hedgerows. If there was a king of badasses, it would surely be Matt Urban. Watch that longer video. I'm telling you, it's worth it. You know, we do occasional Civil War stories. We used to do more, but frankly, the Greatest Generation stories have become our bread and butter and our passion. But every now and again, we find something that hasn't really been told before or that is worth retelling. And one that you all seem to enjoy is the love story that we did, actually fairly recently, about Otis Burton and Susan Mary Payne. I just love this story. It was very little known story that we somehow came across, and it has it all: love, adventure, improbability, and happily ever after. As one viewer puts it, it hits you in the feels. We've received hundreds of comments on this one about how it should be a movie, and yes, we agree it should be a movie. We're looking into it. We actually have quite a few videos that hit you in the feels, these sort of love stories, or sometimes even unrequited love stories that really strike a chord with all of you. We see a lot of tear emojis in our comments. I love the video about Sergeant Andy Anderson and the love of his life, Josephine Hillman, whose picture he carried in the liner of his helmet everywhere during combat. As he put it, it quite literally kept him going, even though they had only met once prior to the war. And after the war, they remained together for 50 years until he was buried with her picture. I just love that story. Some of the love stories are tragic, like the recent one we did about Army nurse Ernestine Caranda, who died en route to her wedding to her GI husband, who she had cared for in Papua New Guinea. That was one of those gut punch stories that nobody saw coming. Lots of tear emojis in the comments. And finally, we do a lot of videos that have an element of faith, or coincidence, or the unknown, whatever you want to call it. It's really up to the viewer to decide, but stories that seem to defy the normal conventions of time and space, so to speak. They're probably our most popular videos, the ones that get the most comments and certainly the most shares. I'll list a few of my favorites in the description box. There's just too many to discuss here. But one in particular stands out, the story of parachuter Robert Hillman and his mother. You know, this video holds special meaning to me and my brother because it quite literally made this channel. Prior to that, we had less than 1,000 subs. We were chugging along, but it was a slow grind. And then we posted this video, and within 2 weeks we had 15,000 subs, and we've been doing 15,000 a month ever since. My brother and I jokingly mark the chronology of this channel by pre-Hillman and post-Hillman. Most of you have probably seen the video. We have a long as well. I put the link in the description box. It's about Robert Hillman, who's about to jump over Normandy in the early morning hours of D-Day, when he realizes that his parachute was made by his mother, who works at the Pioneer Parachute Company right down the street from his home. We get the question frequently, did this really happen? And the answer is yes. It's been well documented and well chronicled. It really did happen. And the other question that comes up is, was it divine intervention or random coincidence? Well, I can't answer that. That's for you to decide. I certainly know what I think, but what matters is what you think. And that's what we love about this channel. We tell the stories of these extraordinary men and women, and it's up to the viewer, you, to find the meaning in them. I can't tell you what they should mean to you, no more than you could tell me what they should mean to me. It's up to each one of us to decide. We'll keep telling these stories if you keep watching. To all of our veterans out there, may God always bless you today and every day. Thank you.